Hey, this is Warren Redlich with big news for the Boring Company. This is the mayor of Fort Lauderdale, Dean Trantalis. I interviewed him not that long ago. You can see the interview up here. He just released an email detailing in a lot more depth what he hopes to achieve with the Boring Company in Fort Lauderdale. So let's go through his email newsletter. You can see the title of this email he wrote is about Elon Musk and transit tunnels. That's the Boring Company's loop tunnels. And he talks about how they had this boat show and they had this traffic problems. You need to plan for 45 minutes or more to go between downtown and the beach, and parking prices were really high. And he says the city is in the midst of negotiations with Elon Musk's Boring Company to build an underground transit loop between downtown and the beach. This is something that we covered in my video with him that I've talked about before. Downtown Fort Lauderdale to the beach, mostly along Las Olas Boulevard, which is a very popular shopping street, a place where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of cars drive through, particularly on, say, a Friday or Saturday evening. It's just very, very heavy traffic. He says using dedicated electric vehicles to navigate the tunnel network, passengers would be transported between locations in about 3 minutes for the cost of a cup of coffee. I think he's talking about a $5 cup of coffee, just to be clear. But still, I was in downtown Fort Lauderdale for a show at the Broward Center, and we decided to go to Las Olas for dinner. We paid, I don't know, $10, $15 for an Uber, and it took more than 3 minutes to get there, and that was only halfway what he's talking about. So we spent more money on an Uber to go a shorter distance slower. He describes it as a cutting-edge project, a visionary step for Fort Lauderdale that builds upon Musk's success in Las Vegas, where a similar system has begun transporting thousands of conventioneers. I rode that Boring Company tunnel system in the Vegas Loop. It's the convention center loop. He says there's a lot of questions about how it would work. City Commission has been limited under state law in what we could say publicly up to this point. I don't think that's really true. That's a common thing that politicians will say is, I can't talk about this because it's under negotiations. They can talk about it. The law allows them to stay quiet about something. It doesn't mean they can't talk about it. But he wants to talk about what this would mean for Fort Lauderdale. He says, as a community, we need to find a public transportation system that is fast, convenient, and expensive. Must be dynamic enough to meet the needs of residents and visitors that change throughout the year. For those who don't know South Florida gets a lot more crowded in the winter. Right? A lot more people come to Florida in the winter because it's cold up north and it's always great weather here. And people leave here in the middle of, say, August because it gets hot and humid. I personally think it's fine, but some people get sick of it here and leave when it's really hot and humid. He says the Musk project fits the bill and is easily expandable. Expandable is important. The initial proposal is just from downtown to the beach, but this system can cover a lot more than that. He's going to talk about that more in this article. He says we would start with the beach route because of the existing traffic limitations on surrounding roadways and the high volume of cars witnessed as key times. There's just a huge volume of traffic on Las Olas Boulevard. The other thing about South Florida is what you have what's called a barrier island. So you have the main part of Florida, and then there's this piece of Florida that's sort of separated. There's an intracoastal waterway. So there's a limited number of roads that get to the beach. So those roads get particularly crowded. And Las Olas Boulevard is one of the roads that's like right near downtown, so it gets really, really heavy traffic and get really slow. He says A1A is at its capacity. A1A is the road that runs along the barrier island north to south. It is not one of the roads that comes across. Sunrise Boulevard, Las Olas Boulevard, and Southeast 17th Street have frequent traffic jams as well. Those are the three roads that go across the Intracoastal Waterway to the beach. And particularly during the winter season's hot, and particularly during events like the boat show he referenced at the beginning, music festival, air show, 4th of July, fireworks. There are moments where the system gets really jammed. The road system gets really jammed and it's really awful. You need to look beyond traditional solutions. There's no way to widen the roads. The roads are as wide as they're going to be. South Florida has had a difficult time increasing the public use of transit. Buses suck. And, we have rail lines. He's going to talk about rail lines later. People don't want to ride the rails either. Buses are slow and unreliable. They're also filled with people. Look, to be blunt, we all have biases, and a lot of us don't want to ride on buses because there's homeless people on the buses. There's people that we don't feel comfortable around on the buses. So here he talks about Musk's Boring Company provides a safe, fast to build, low cost, clean transit system, offers high capacity, user-friendly service. Imagine dedicated electric vehicles quickly taking suburban families from downtown parking to a day of sun and surf, couples to a concert or hotel, and restaurant workers to their jobs, all with less hassle. Sounds pretty good to me. So to be clear, though, taking suburban families from downtown parking to a day of sun and surf, that's the simple thing, right? Suburban families somehow get to downtown, they park downtown, and then they take a trip out to the beach. This is the beginning of the system. This is when it's just downtown to the beach. This is before it expands. Couples to a concert or hotel, restaurant workers to their jobs, all with less hassle. The restaurants are on Las Olas Boulevard. The concert is probably at the Broward Center, something like that. I love his description here of how it works. While it's underground, it's not a subway system. I would describe it as more as an express concierge level service. It's on demand and destination to destination. This means it has no stops and no waiting. You jump in and go. It eliminates many of the inconveniences of traditional public transit and results in dramatically reduced time spent traveling. I want to be clear about what this means. You enter a loop system. The Vegas system has a detailed map that shows a lot of this. And you're going from the beginning of the system to the end of the system, and there's 10 stops in between. The way the system is designed, on a regular transit system, you would make every stop. And every time you would have, that adds a minute for each stop. Let's say that adds 10 minutes to your trip. If it's 20 stops, then it adds 20 minutes to your trip or more. The vehicle has to slow down. It has to stop. It has to open its doors. It has to wait for some people to get out, some people to come in. It just adds a lot of time. With the boring system, what you'll see is right here on the edge. This is actually not as good as what the system's going to be, but this is the lane that cars go in when they're not stopping. So in the Las Vegas Loop system, this is the lane over here. If they're not stopping at the center station, they just keep going. So there's no stop. They do slow down. They slow down to about 8-10 miles an hour in this particular version of a station. In some of the versions of the station, the through lane will be separate, and they will continue going 100 miles an hour, let's say, through the station. So you get where you're going much, much faster. The vehicles will be able to go seriously 100 miles an hour, and they will just, a car can go 100 miles an hour on a regular road. These are cars that can go 100 miles an hour, maybe even faster. There's no cross traffic. There's no intersections. So the cars will be going very fast. So it's fast, it's efficient, and you don't have to stop. So if you're going from, one spot to another and it's a 10-mile trip, and normally you would make 10 stops, you make no stops. You just get there much faster. This is one of the huge benefits of the boring system that people like Thunderfoot don't get. They don't understand that this makes it much, much faster to get from point A to point B. And here he says it again, passengers go directly from their starting point to their final destination using a main tunnel and off-ramps. So there's off-ramps to the stations. Instead of it being like you saw it in that Vegas picture, you see that the through lane is next to the station. In the version that he's talking about, it's a main tunnel and off-ramps. So it's an underground highway. There's no waiting for the next train. There's no delay as you go from station to station. You get to the station and a car is there waiting for you or pulls up very quickly. You hop in and you go where you need to go. Another key point is that the loop's capacity is flexible because we can adjust the number of cars in circulation. This is true of subways as well. They can take a subway out of circulation at periods of low demand. But nevertheless, they're able to add cars to the system when they have more demand and move cars from the system when they don't have as much demand. And it makes the overall system more efficient. We can also add destinations along the way. If they decide to add a new station, they just add a new station, they put in new off-ramps. Most likely the system will be designed from the beginning, knowing where we want the stations. Rather than trying to add stations later, it's probably going to be harder, but it's something that can be done. They're going to launch the service with drivers, but will eventually move to automated vehicles as the Tesla car company predicts that technology and state governments allow its use. Florida already allows its use. It's already Florida state law that it's already legal. Teslas aren't there yet. Nobody else is there yet. It's probably going to happen within the next couple of years, maybe 1 year. My own view on this is that it's not a focus for Tesla to train the cars to drive safely on their own in the boring tunnels because there aren't enough boring tunnels. There aren't enough cars in boring tunnels to generate enough data to make the artificial intelligence, the machine learning work well. The context of driving in these tunnel networks is different than the context of driving on roads. There are more than 1 million Teslas on the roads in the United States and the world. It's much more important that they learn to drive on the roads than the 70 cars that are in the Las Vegas tunnel, right? They generate a lot more data, so it's a lot easier to train on more data. So when there are more tunnels, when there are more vehicles operating in the tunnels, then it will make sense to do the training to make sure that the vehicles drive safely in the tunnels. I think people have this idea that if the cars are driving safely on the roads, then they'll drive safely on the tunnels. And machine learning is quirky. Neural networks are quirky. I'm not sure that a car that drives completely safely on above ground roads is going to drive as well in the tunnels. Even though the tunnel system is simpler, it still has to learn it. And that still requires a lot of data. It still requires a lot of cars to do it. It requires a lot of data. They're going to get there, But I don't think they're going to get there that quick because it's not a priority for Tesla to train the cars to do that yet until they have enough cars, until the system is big enough to bother. Why Elon Musk? Trantalis is obviously impressed with Elon. Dramatically cut the cost of missions to space and has moved electric vehicles to the mainstream. Talks about Elon's experience being stuck in traffic and wondering if it was possible. And underground transit was once a very expensive solution, but Musk has dramatically reduced the cost through his innovations. He talks about Boring Company's first venture in Las Vegas, built a transit tunnel just 1 year's time. They just built this tunnel. You think about how many times a public works project takes years and years and years. The Big Dig in Boston is a great example of this disaster that happens. In just 1 year's time, they built the tunnel system, whisking people across the campus. The system has cut a 30-minute walk into a trip of 1 or 2 minutes. I've done it. It's true. It's less than 2 minutes, end to end. And it is like a 30-minute walk. Maybe it's a 20, 25-minute walk, but it's really that fast. Thunderfoot made this thing about how this would have been more efficient with buses. There's no good way to make the buses work. It ignores how the property is laid out. It just doesn't make any sense. This is a key point. Vegas officials are so impressed that they've now hired Musk to build a 35-mile system connecting dozens of popular destinations along the resort corridor to the airport and downtown. There's something like 51 stops and something like 29 miles. He says it's a 35-mile system. I thought it was a 29-mile system. I don't know if it really matters, but there's like 51 stops. The casinos are going to pay to build their own stops. This is a system that's going to serve a lot of people, and it's going to take a lot of traffic off roads, and it's going to make life much, much better in Las Vegas. And he makes the point that Las Vegas and Fort Lauderdale are looking at the same technology because they're both cities with huge tourism bases and rapid population growth, and they're both cities willing to think outside the box to address our challenges. You look at the cities like New York, Chicago, a lot of older established cities just aren't willing to think outside the box. They don't see it. They don't get the potential. They don't want things, a lot of cities just, they're staid, they're boring. That's not the way they work. They're not thinking outside the box. Miami's mayor, Fort Lauderdale's mayor, the folks in Vegas, they figured it out. Hey, this is a much better solution. Elon was able to reach the right people. The team at the Boring Company was able to reach the right people. They're able to have these conversations. And there's, critical keys. The cost of tunneling has gotten so much less with the Boring Company that it just makes sense. It ends up being cheaper than doing any other solution, and it ends up being better. The mayor addresses a common criticism that it's not going to work in Florida because you have to go around downtown buildings, you have to tunnel underwater. Boring Company has addressed these concerns with other projects, and it's more than capable of doing so here as well. We already have tunnels in South Florida. The Kinney Tunnel on Federal Highway goes underneath the New River, and there's a tunnel at the Port of Miami. In Las Vegas, the Boring Company had to tunnel through a high water table and various forms of rock. They went under the convention center with no damage, and the firm's initial test tunnel outside Los Angeles, which is in Hawthorne, which is south of Los Angeles International Airport, went underneath the neighborhood with no disruption either. Describes the technology a little bit. They would use a directional boring machine that builds the surrounding concrete walls as it drills. The tunnel would be brightly illuminated with primary and backup power systems, cell phone service, and a video camera system connected to a public address system. Sensors to measure safety data, ventilation system, flood controls, and egress shafts. That's how you get out for emergencies. And you can see, brightly lit tunnels. It's not a challenge to make the tunnels well lit. It's not a challenge to make the tunnels safe and comfortable. All the questions people ask about, is it going to be safe? We've had tunnels for over 100 years. Can we get over that? Ventilation system. Of course they're ventilated. We've been tunneling for over 100 years and people still think this is a problem. They tunneled on, all the tunnels in New York City, the Lincoln Tunnel, they go under rivers. It works. It's not that difficult. There's all kinds of problems that people think exist that don't exist. We've had tunnels all over the world for decades, more than 100 years. Tunnels work. Stop acting like tunnels are something difficult. So the mayor addresses a key point that I think it's actually one of the city councilmen raised this point. Why we chose a beach to downtown loop rather than other pressure points in the transportation system. He sees this as just a beginning. The hope would be that we build support from other local governments. I've reached out to the Palm Beach County commissioners that I know to say, hey, we should be looking at this and expand just like Vegas is now doing. I have this view that you build this in one place and the neighboring cities are going to see it and say, holy crap, we want that. Everybody in Boca Raton, Florida, where I lived for 10 years, everybody in Coral Springs, we all go to downtown Fort Lauderdale once in a while. And all these people from all over South Florida are going to go to Las Olas because that's the place to go in Fort Lauderdale. Broward Center's there for shows. There's great restaurants. There's a beach there. beaches everywhere, so people aren't going there for the beach. But Las Olas Boulevard shopping, restaurants, the Broward Center for concerts. There's a great museum there, like a science and technology museum there for kids. All of a sudden, all these people are going to experience this tunnel system and say, holy crap, why don't we have this? And that's what's going to cause it to expand. And the mayor talks about the potential for the future. Future connections could go to the airport, seaport, convention center, stadium, the Tri-Rail station. This is one of my concerns is connecting to transit. Tri-Rail is going to be obsolete. Tri-Rail is an above-ground train system. It's going to be made obsolete by the Boring Company eventually, but we'll get to that later. And points out west, such as Nova Southeastern University, Sawgrass Mills Mall, which is pretty far out west. That's almost in the Everglades, and the Hard Rock. The Hard Rock is a casino and hotel. The loop would also fit seamlessly into the planned expansion of Brightline service and proposed commuter rail. Again, I believe that commuter rail, Brightline is another kind of rail. Those are going to be made obsolete by the Boring Company within 10 years. So that's kind of misleading, but I think he believes it. I don't think Elon has made it so clear yet. Once you decide to run boring tunnels to connecting cities, it's going to make a lot more sense than using trains. But think about the possibilities. An expanded, fully built-out loop would dramatically reduce congestion in the region by providing a clean, cheap, and efficient alternative mode of transportation. And there could be additional benefits. Beach residents have long expressed concern about EMS capabilities when the barrier island is packed or a bridge is locked open. They have bridges that open up, and so the ambulances can't get across. We can design EMS vehicles that use the tunnel. That's not hard to do. Taking those in need of critical care quickly to mainland hospitals or moving additional EMS support to the beach. The tunnels are a huge advantage for so many different reasons. I would say this. Think about the noise pollution benefit. When cars are driving on roads, they make noise. If you live in an apartment near a major road, you hear the cars driving by. If half the traffic is now underground, you've reduced the noise pollution by half. It's a massive benefit. Electric vehicles don't cause air pollution, so the air is going to be cleaner, and they're going to be underground. So, that there's so much, and then you minimize pedestrian collisions, right? Because there's no pedestrian collisions in the tunnels. The tunnels are designed so that pedestrians are here and cars are there, and you don't get pedestrians walking where the cars are, as opposed to roads where you have all these crosswalks. There's no crosswalks in the tunnels. So it's a much, much safer environment for cars to drive fast and for people to get rides safely and for pedestrians to walk around. And the mayor talks about, doing more to upgrade other things in the city. Okay, we're not just doing this, we're doing other things. He's still looking at other ideas such as commuter rail, a bypass on 17th Street to the port, one-way street pairings downtown. They have other ideas that they're looking at. I honestly think that once they have a loop system, all this stuff is going to become a lot easier. The other side of it is if the loop system is successful in one city, it attracts people who want to move to a place that has such a successful system, and then you have more population. So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem there. I don't know if chicken and egg is the right term there, but you need to do something to, ideally you have these systems in every city so people don't just flock to the one city that has it. It's going to be in Austin, it's going to be in San Antonio, it's going to be in Miami, it's going to be in Las Vegas. More and more cities are going to adopt this. Boring Company is going to grow like crazy. Elon, please let us invest in the Boring Company. I want in. He says he looks forward to continuing this discussion in the coming months as the city reviews Musk's proposal, undertakes engineering studies, and conducts public outreach. We want to be a city on the move. So coming months, this isn't happening fast, unfortunately. The status was that they got the proposal, they put it out for bid to see if there were other proposals that would meet roughly what they were looking for, and there were 2 proposals that did not meet the standards. So the Boring Company's solution is the only one they're looking at. And now they're doing studies to see about engineering, and they're conducting public outreach to see what people want. Months, I hate seeing coming months, but hopefully the city will make a decision, let's say by spring. And then the Boring Company goes ahead and builds the tunnel, and it's going to take about a year to build the tunnels because they're able to do it fast. And once they build the tunnels and they get the system up and running, it's going to be a showpiece for the world, just like Vegas. It's going to be another showpiece for the world. Miami's probably going to follow quickly if Miami isn't. And I'm pretty sure Miami's already working on this. It's very obvious that Mayor Suarez has been talking to Elon Musk and talking to Boring Company, and staff at Miami has been talking to the Boring Company. So this is probably going to happen in Miami as well. And then ultimately it's going to connect Miami to Fort Lauderdale to West Palm Beach. You're going to see a lot of connections. I love that he's talking about going out west to Sawgrass Mills. Sawgrass Mills is practically in the Everglades. So being able to reach a lot of the population and save a lot of traffic in a lot of different ways will make life better for everyone. And I'm hoping it comes up here to Coral Springs and goes up to Boca Raton and West Palm Beach. A lot of potential for this to make the roads better for a lot of people, to make life better for a lot of people, to let people get from point A to point B much, much faster than they did before. So right now from West Boca Raton to say the American Airlines Arena in Miami where the Miami Heat play or their concerts, it's easily an hour with traffic. It could be an hour and a half, 2 hours to get there. And then you got to pay a ridiculous amount for parking. Now imagine you hop in a Boring Company station at, say, the Town Center Mall in West Boca Raton, Middle Boca Raton. You hop on there and it gets you there in 20 minutes and you don't have to worry about parking. You parked at the mall, you park at whatever station works for you. You go down, you hop on a Boring Company system thing, and it gets you there in 20 minutes for $20. And you're done. It's probably less than $20. This is the future. This is going to be great. You're going to be able to go where you want to go in South Florida for less money than it costs to drive your car without having to worry about parking. You're going to get there faster. It's going to be so much better. It's going to be safer. This is going to make life much better in South Florida, and this is going to expand. It's going to expand all over the world. There are roughly 1,000 cities in the world that are roughly the size of Las Vegas, some much bigger, some a little smaller. They're all going to need about 100 miles of tunnel on average. Some are going to need more, some are going to need less, but on average about 100 miles of tunnel. These are ballpark numbers. That's 100,000 miles of tunnel. Right now there's 2 miles of tunnel. So a Boring Company is going to grow insanely large. The value of the Boring Company is going to be off the charts, and at some point Elon is probably going to do an IPO of the Boring Company, and I'm going to be one of the first ones in. If there was a way to get in, if I could get in, Elon, if you can let me in, some kind of venture capital, I don't care how it works, you can make this accessible to retail investors in some way. I'll put 100 grand in. I'll dig and I'll find the 100 grand. Let me in, let us in. I can find people. We want in. I just think this is the potential for Boring Company to not only make Fort Lauderdale better, to not only make Miami or Las Vegas better, but to make the entire world better. It's going to be spectacular. The travel times are going to shrink. The cost of travel is going to shrink. Safety is going to go up. Everything's going to be cleaner. Everything's going to be quieter. It's so much better. I'm so looking forward to this. Obviously, I could talk about this forever, but let's just say I'm really excited about the Boring Company. I hope you're excited about the Boring Company. Boring is exciting. Check out my interview with Mayor Trantalis here. Check out one of my other videos about the Boring Company here. Please support the channel on Patreon. Thanks to the Vasa Law Firm in Sweden, all my Patreon supporters for helping the channel grow. Check out the t-shirts and the stainless steel water bottle at elonbits.com. And thank you so much for watching.